Crisp, clean drinking water. It's one of Florida's most precious resources, but taking care of it is no easy task. So today we're going to meet with the folks from the Southwest Florida Water Management District to talk about how they keep our drinking water clean and how they manage the Floridan Aquifer. So sit back, relax, and join me on this science quest. Hi, Robyn.
Hi, Steve.
I'm here with Robyn Felix. She is the Communications Manager for the Southwest Florida Water Management District. Now, Robyn, the Southwest Florida Water Management District, or SWFWMD, does a lot of different things, but what is it exactly that you guys do in the district?
Well, our main mission is to manage the water and related natural resources for the 16-county region.
Okay. Now, when you say 16-county region, we're talking pretty much right smack in the middle of the state, right?
Right. We are one of 5 water management districts in the state of Florida, and our region covers from Marion County all the way south to Charlotte and out to Polk County.
I see. And, you know, thinking about the way Florida's kind of laid out, Central Florida has a very unique range of different environments, I guess you could say. Handling stuff like that is probably a very varied task.
It is. It's an amazing job that we've been entrusted with by the state of Florida. We manage a very wide range of water resources. We have estuaries, major rivers, lakes, creeks, bays. So we have a lot of water resources within our 16-county region to protect.
You have all these different areas, you know, you said about the estuaries, the environmental, and we're out here at a beautiful location looking at some wetlands and things like that. How does taking care of the our environmental resources, how does that play into managing the resources of the district?
Well, sure. Well, again, you know, we're a very diverse agency. We do a lot of different things to protect the water resources. We do environmental permitting. We do big restoration projects where we come in and restore thousands of acres of wetlands and shoreline along the major rivers and bays. So there's just a lot of things that we're doing. We're always out there looking what are the projects that we can do. We work with our local government partners to get those projects done. So
it's not just going out and taking some water samples. You guys are actually, you know, putting the plow to the ground, I guess you could say, and kind of helping the environment and fixing it.
Yes, and partnerships are so important. You know, we work with our local government partners and other agencies together to really pool our resources, and we provide them funding to do projects, and then we do some projects on our own as well. But, you know, working together, we can really maximize our dollars and do so much more.
Now, as I'm looking around, I mean, I was told this is 1,000 acres of wetland out here at the Old Florida Plantation just outside of Bartow. Something like this project has to take a lot of money, a lot of funding. Where do you get your funds from?
Well, our funds come from ad valorem property taxes. So basically, when you pay your property tax bill, you'll see a line for the Southwest Florida Water Management District. So really, everything we do, it's your property taxes at work.
Now, I can imagine, you know, as a resident of Polk County, and I look at those, you know, line items, and I think, well, there's no wetlands near me. There's no, there's no major lakes right around my immediate area. Why am I paying for, this stuff? But it's really all part of a system, isn't it?
That's exactly right. You know, really, we all live in what's called a watershed. So, you know, everything you do, whether you're fertilizing your lawn or you're, maybe you've dropped a little bit of oil on the ground, you know, everything eventually runs off to the closest water body. So really, that's one thing we're always trying to get people to understand is, you know, their actions really do affect the water bodies, even if it's many miles away.
Right, right.
Part of our core mission is water supply. So we need to make sure that there's enough water for both now and in the future. So we work with, like I said, our local government partners, and we need to make sure that we do have, adequate water supplies. So what we do is we really examine the supplies that are available. Then we look out into the future and see how much water are we going to need in the future. And then we work together to come up with projects such as maybe reservoir desalination. So we look at those things and we start planning for the future to make sure we're going to have those adequate water supplies for the future.
Cool. Now, Robyn, this is obviously just one of so many locations, so many different things going on. 1,000 acres of wetlands is quite impressive, but we're talking about how many? 16
counties.
16 counties you're covering. So obviously there are projects going on all over the place.
Absolutely.
Now, who would I talk to learn about some of the different things that you guys have going on?
Well, actually, we have Randy Smith here, and he's going to talk to you about some of our projects.
All right, let's go.
Okay.
Hey, Randy.
How you doing?
Robyn sent me over here. She said that you kind of put together a lot of the projects for SWFWMD.
Yes, I manage the Lake Hancock projects here in Polk County that we have nearing completion right now.
And of course, we're here at the Circle B Bar Reserve, and you were explaining that this is kind of a cooperative land between SWFWMD and Polk County, right?
Yes, the Lake Hancock projects required a lot of land purchases to construct the projects, and Circle B was one of the project lands identified, and we cooperatively purchased this land with Polk County.
And this isn't something, I mean, these projects are huge in scope. I mean, it's not something that just pops up overnight.
Right, these are some of the largest projects that the district has done. The projects have been in the works for over a decade. They're huge projects, required a lot of stakeholder involvement, local governments. Every part of the district has been involved in these projects.
So we're standing here at Circle B, and I'm looking, and there's, we're kind of in the middle of this area where there's a lot of wetlands and stuff. I know you have a lot of projects going on in this area. How does this fit in?
When the district co-purchased this property with Polk County, there was an opportunity to enhance an area on this property that had been drained in past years, and to rehab the wetlands on this property.
Okay, and then of course this pours into Lake Hancock.
Yep, these wetlands will help polish the water and improve water quality discharging to Lake Hancock.
Now, we kind of briefly touched on it with Robyn. She had mentioned some of the things that were going on with Lake Hancock and the many projects that you have going on all over the state, really. What is it about Lake Hancock that you're doing, and how does it
how it all started was the minimum flows in the Upper Peace River aren't being met. So the district had to develop a recovery.
Now, when you say minimum flows, you're talking about how deep the river actually is?
At its lowest times.
Okay.
So it has to maintain a minimum level in the river. And the district sets those minimum levels. And when they set them, if those systems aren't meeting their MFL, the district must develop a recovery strategy.
Okay.
And the Lake Hancock projects were a major component of that recovery strategy. There's two main projects involved with the Lake Hancock projects: the Lake Level Modification Project and the Lake Hancock Outfall Treatment Project. The Lake Level Modification Project involved replacing the outfall structure on Lake Hancock and raising the control elevation from 98.7 to 100 feet. So we'd be able to store an additional 1.5 feet of water in the lake that we could then use during the dry season to slowly release and to maintain those minimum flows and levels in the Upper Peace River.
So basically, when you talk about the structure, you're talking about basically like a dam that you're going to raise the level with.
A dam that we have a lot of control with.
Okay.
That we can control the gates and control how much water is released.
And then that's going to release down into the Peace River and
correct, improve the levels during the dry times.
Okay.
And the other project is the wetland treatment system. Lake Hancock is known as having some of the poorest water quality in the state, and the district did a lot of work to determine how best we could improve that water discharging to the Upper Peace River. And so the district embarked on constructing a 1,000-acre treatment wetland. It's located on the south shore of Lake Hancock, and it's in the footprint of an old clay settling area. And we've constructed a treatment wetland that'll be able to treat the water discharging from Lake Hancock. We expect to get to reduce nutrient loading to the system by 27%, which is going to remove about 174,000 pounds of nitrogen a year.
Wow. And that, when we talk about the nitrogen in it, that's what's really kind of affecting the groundwater. I mean,
it's more the surface water
okay.
Component at this point. Is that
what's going into the Peace River.
Correct. The high nutrients, algal blooms, it degrades the water quality, it makes it less healthy for other organisms, and it really degrades the system.
Yeah, I was talking to Robyn just a little bit ago, and that's actually where we were at. A beautiful place. I mean, you say 1,000 acres, but you can't really appreciate that until you see what 1,000 acres of wetlands actually looks like.
Yeah, it's huge out there. You can't appreciate it until you get on site and look at it.
Okay, so Randy, this project with Lake Hancock, obviously the water coming in, and the structure that you're building, the wetlands, these are all things that we can see, the physical aspect of the project. But how does this all play into the system, say for our groundwater, drinking water, things like that?
Well, I would tie these projects into that situation two ways. One is the Upper Peace River goes dry periods of time now. With this project, we'll be able to make sure that there's flow in the Upper Peace River at all times. There's a lot of sink features in the Upper Peace River that take in water from the river that recharge the aquifer. So
when you say sink, you're talking about basically like sinkholes that water just kind of...
Not sinkholes as you would think, but cracks and crevices in the base of the river that allow water to recharge into the aquifer.
Okay.
So if there's no water in the river, there's no recharge. So if we can maintain flow in the river, that's going to increase recharge to the aquifer. Also, if we can clean up the water before it discharges in the aquifer, we're also improving the water quality before it discharges into the aquifer.
The Floridan Aquifer is one of those things that I just find so intriguing, and of course it's in the news all the time about the low quality and everything like that. It's just an interesting topic.
Well, Mark Hammond, our division director, could give you a lot more information on that.
Okay.
Here, let me take you to him.
Cool. So Mark, this is really neat being out here at Circle B Bar Reserve to kind of see how SWFWMD is putting into action some of the projects and things. I just talked to Randy out at the wetland cells, and he was talking about recharge in the Peace River and how that can seep down into the aquifers. What kind of a basic understanding, what is an aquifer?
Well, the aquifer it's underground, and it's where we get our drinking water in Polk County. And most people will drill a well down into the ground, whether it's 100 feet down, 200 feet down, to get that water. And in this area, we have 4 aquifers underground. You have your superficial, which you'll find very close to land surface. And then as you go further down, you'll find what we refer to as the intermediate aquifer. And then as you go further down, you've got the upper Floridan, and then finally you've got the lower Floridan. Okay. And each of them are separated by clay layers that then can recharge to certain degrees, and each aquifer has an amount of water that you can withdraw out of there cost effectively.
Okay. Do the aquifers ever like merge together? I mean, does the...
Excellent question. The clay layers that will tend to separate those are not uniform, and so in some cases you have very thick clay layers between those aquifers, and you may not see much interconnection. And in some areas you have very little clay areas, and so you can get quite a bit of interconnection between those. And they also have different water quality. As you go further down into the lower Floridan, you can get less or poorer water quality, more mineralized water. Okay. Chlorides and total dissolved solids, things there that then you have to treat that water to use it. You may not be able to use it on some of the crops because it can burn some of the crops depending on what the water quality is.
Now, when you say about being able to use the water, what of those 4 different aquifers, which ones do we use the most for for our drinking water and things like that?
Most in Polk we're using, and in our district too, where we use the upper Floridan. It's generally it's a fresh aquifer, meaning that you can withdraw that water and you can drink it. It's of a quality there that requires very minimal treatment, maybe just chlorination and a little bit of aeration. And it's very cost effective. You can also get quite a bit of a yield out of there.
So it's a pretty large...
It's a large, and it's also very porous in terms of that the water can move very freely through that aquifer. So if you put a well in there, your well can result in quite a bit of water in there.
Okay.
Versus some of the other aquifers that, again, they're not very, what they'll refer to as, they're not very productive. You can put a well into them, but you're not going to get a lot of water out of it.
So if you're taking it out, it's not refilling as fast.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, how do the aquifers actually get their water? Where's it coming from?
Well, in Florida and right in here in Polk, the water that we get in our aquifers comes from above. It lands as rainfall on the surface, and some of that water will run off into our rivers and streams. You see it in the rivers, you
Right.
see it in the lakes, you see it in our wetlands. Some of that water will evaporate. As we all do, we see the water
Right.
just evaporate in front of us. And some of the water is what we refer to as transpired through the plants. The plants will take up that water. That water that's not evaporated or it's not running off into the streams and it's not used by the plants, some of that water will start filtering down into the aquifer. Okay. First the superficial, then make its way into the intermediate, and then the upper Floridan, and then possibly the lower Floridan. And how much goes in there depends again on those clay layers. In some areas, say along the ridge part of US 27 along Polk County, where you see the deep sandy soils, the
Right.
well-drained soils,
Right.
you get quite a bit of water that lands on the ground surface, will make its way down into the aquifer. And many of you have seen, if you go out there in the heavy rainstorms and you see water puddling in areas,
Yeah.
you may not get as much, and in some areas along the ridge there, you can go out there and see some big downpours, and you go out there and look and there's no puddles at
Yeah.
all because it's
An
soaks
hour
right
later,
in.
it's dry.
It's all it drains right into there.
That's interesting. What when it comes to the different types of aquifers, you said there's superficial, basically surface
It's the surface,
water,
right?
and then the intermediate. Do we ever pull drinking water out of the intermediate? I mean, are there?
In some areas they can pull out of the intermediate. In some areas it's a poorer quality. In some areas it's not as productive, and so you can put a well in there, but you're not going to get a lot of water out. And so that's why now, at least for most of the municipalities and the county that have and the agriculture that have been utilizing, they need larger producing wells, and so they tend to go down into the upper Floridan that is fresher. Now, for the homeowners that may have shallow wells for irrigation, they may be more down into the superficial. They may get down to the intermediate, which is in some areas you're not going to find it because, again, it may not have those clay layers separating it. So you may just see the superficial and more go down into the Floridan.
What are obviously you said they're not real uniform. The aquifers are not very uniform.
Right.
But what are we looking at, like depth-wise, between the different aquifers?
Well, you can get the superficial. You can get down 20, 30, 40 feet and deeper. When you start getting into
when I think of surface, I don't really think of 40 feet deep. I think of 10 feet deep.
Yeah, and you can get some that are 10 feet, but as you get in some of those well-drained soils, you may have to go a little bit more down in there. Now, where you're seeing a lot of the wetlands at the surface in the lakes, there you're going to see the superficial is right there just at those wetland levels.
Right.
So if you go out there and you look and you see some wetlands in your area or a lake, you can essentially look at those lake levels or those wetland layers, and real close to there, that's what you're going to find water in the superficial. Now, as you get down into the upper Floridan, you may be talking several hundred feet deep, and then the lower Floridan can be 1,000 feet and deeper to be able to do that. And so it costs more to put those wells in the deeper you go.
Now, you had mentioned a little bit earlier, most of the farmers, agricultural, things like that, they are pulling water. They can't pull water from the lower Floridan because, or typically they can't pull it because of the chemicals and the minerals, not chemicals, but the minerals that are in so heavy in that. How does withdrawal from agriculture affect our aquifers?
Well, the withdrawals that we're using in the county, both for agriculture and public supply, those that are coming out of the upper Floridan, what happens is as you remove water out of the upper Floridan aquifer, you'll create more recharge into there from possibly the intermediate or the superficial. So what it does is as you're taking it out of there, out of the upper Floridan, whether it's ag or public supply, it can get replenished from above.
Okay.
Okay, it can also get replenished from the sides, but if it's getting it from above, it could be getting it all the way up into the lakes and the wetlands. And that's what we've seen along the ridge is that both along the ridge and the upper Peace River, why some of the lake levels have declined, and a major reason that the Peace River and the upper Peace River is below its minimum flows is because we've withdrawn more water out of the aquifer, and so it's pulled that water, essentially allowed that water to recharge in, and so it's lowered those levels.
I see. Obviously, there's a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort invested into researching all of this. And I would imagine this is probably a pretty big concern with the amount of withdrawal that's happening from agriculture.
Well, and it's not just ag. It's throughout a region. It's public supply, agriculture industry and they have a critical need. They're part of the economy. We need the drinking water. We need agriculture. So those are things there that are important and they're reasonable beneficial uses in the public interest. What we have to do is find ways to manage those withdrawals, and part of it is through conservation, so that we're using water more efficiently, which allows everybody to utilize that water. In some cases where we've seen where we're withdrawing to the point where it's impacted some of our lakes and wetlands and the upper Peace River, we find projects to try to restore some of those flows.
Okay.
Like Lake Hancock, where we can store water during the wet season and then release it during the dry season to help meet the minimum flows for the upper Peace River, which then allows people to continue to utilize the groundwater that we've been using for decades.
It's basically like a reservoir.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Why then are we not able to, here in Polk County, here in the Central Florida region, why are we not able to create more Lake Hancocks, more reservoirs?
It's a good question that we've looked at, and a lot of people ask that, and unfortunately we're kind of at the top of the hill in Polk, and this is where the Peace River forms. You have the Withlacoochee more up in the Green Swamp that flows more north. So at the top of the hill on these surface water systems, the flows are not as sustainable. And so when you try to develop an off-stream reservoir, the cost of that and the ability for the streams to be able to replenish that are limited, and so the cost effectiveness is much different than if you were to go further downstream where you have a more sustainable flow in the river where you can pull off water and make it cost effective. So typically, at least in Florida streams, the further downstream and in many cases all the way down to the mouth of the river is really where those off-stream reservoirs become very cost effective, that you can develop a sustainable supply to meet a region and provide it to a population that then the cost can be effective.
So it's basically because we're at the top of the hill, even though we're getting the same amount of rainfall as the rest of, as the folks below us, we don't have the streams that we have the ability to pull off of and contribute to a reservoir.
Yeah, being at the top of the hill, think of it as that you've got just a small portion that's getting the rainfall in there and generating that stream. Downstream, at the down, it's the whole area from the top of the hill all the way to the bottom of the hill is all contributing to that stream. And what we find is that you can withdraw water from our rivers a certain portion of that without causing adverse impacts to that. But and so the question though is it sustainable enough? And the further up the top of the hill, it's more flashy, and so you just don't have. It's not able to be as sustainable or cost effective.
It's really interesting because, you know, when we turn our faucet on and we take a big glass of water and we chug it down, or we throw it down the sink and waste it, we're not really thinking about all of the effort that goes into making sure that that water is drinkable, that water is usable. There's so much research and data that's going into what you guys are doing.
Yes, and I think you bring up a great point in terms of the efficient use of water. What we've learned over the years is that it's critical that we're being as efficient as possible, and so conservation is one of the least expensive alternatives out there. And we've seen many of the communities there that used to use 150 gallons per person per day, and now they're able to use 80 gallons per person per day. You know, by using other sources, be more efficient with their use, and it can prolong the need and extend out or postpone the need for some of the more expensive sources that are out there, and it's very cost effective.
Well, Mark, this has been an absolutely riveting conversation. Now, I promised Robyn I would go meet back up with her before I took off, but thank you so much. This has been a real treat.
Well, Stephen, appreciate it. Also, always the interest, and we look forward to working with you some more.
All right, we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
You know, Robyn, it's been really great coming out here, learning about what it is that you guys do, and so many different things that you take care of throughout the entire district. And of course, we're standing here in front of the P11 structure that Randy was talking about. What are some of the things that, as residents, we can do to help you in the process of all of these different conservation efforts?
Well, you know, water is a precious, limited resource here in Florida. So it's really important that everyone does their part to conserve water. And when we say conserve, what we mean is just being efficient with our water use and not wasting the water.
Right. When we're conserving the water, you know, what about like indoors? What are some things that we can do just around the house to help conserve the water?
Sure, there's a lot of easy things that you can do indoors. You can turn off the water while you're brushing your teeth or shaving. We always recommend only running your dishwasher and your washing machine when they're full. And just taking shorter showers. Actually, showering is a really big use indoors. So just taking shorter showers is a great way to conserve water.
And not only indoors with the everyday household things, but outdoors there are ways to conserve water as well, right?
Sure. Outdoors, one of the things you should do is check your irrigation system. Make sure that you're watering your lawn and not the sidewalk and your driveway. Making sure that you're following your water restrictions. And then if you've gotten rainfall, you can skip your watering day.
Oh yeah. Well, and I would imagine probably the same thing goes for, washing your car. Don't do it every week.
Sure. We recommend, if you can, wash it on the lawn so that the water is running off onto the lawn versus on the driveway.
What are some good resources for people to go to learn a little bit more about it? Because I know that we just kind of touched the surface on the Floridan Aquifer and all the different things that you guys do. What are some resources?
Well, we've got great information on our website at watermatters.org/conservation. We've got brochures and tips and how-to videos. You can learn how to check the time on your irrigation system, learn how to fix leaks. So there's lots of great information, and all of our brochures on our website will be shipped to you free of charge.
Just such a wide variety of things that you guys do. I want to thank you for taking me around here, and of course Randy and Mark for telling me about everything. And hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Robyn. Well, that's about all the time we have for today. So join me next time as we seek out yet another science quest.